Hi everyone, welcome back to the Stars and Startups podcast with me, Varun Gumidi. This is the podcast where we get up close and personal with interesting founders and doers from the Indian startup ecosystem. On the podcast, we hear illuminating stories of entrepreneurship and the journey of building up businesses. Though Indians are very demanding of service and service requests arise for less than 3% of all mobile handset sales, very few companies take it seriously. That's exactly what Servify saw as an opportunity to solve for globally from India. A large opportunity to support mobile phone brands manage customer expectations with technology and processes. On this episode, I have Sreevathsa Prabhakar of Servify. We chat with Sree on his journey with Indian and global brands and taking that learning into building his second service-oriented venture. As always, I really appreciate it if you subscribe to our channels wherever you are consuming this podcast and share our episode with others if you like it. Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. Today we have Sreevathsa, who is one of those humble founders. He's a second-time founder, but the interesting thing is his company, Servify, probably covers the smartphone you're currently watching this video or listening to this podcast on. The company covers the warranty period for a lot of smartphones, including Apple, Samsung, Xiaomi, OnePlus. So we're going to dig into it a little bit. A lot more interesting things that Sree has done, and he's talked about entrepreneurship. So let's say hi to Sree today. Hey Sree, how are you doing?
Doing good, Varun. Thanks for calling me. It's been a pleasure to talk to you always.
No, fantastic. This is long overdue, and whenever I see a smartphone and I see somebody having the Servify app, I think of you. So that's quite often.
Thank you. Thank you.
What's kept you busy during lockdown?
Oh, uh, meetings from morning till evening. I think what's lockdown done to all of us is, I think, this work from home thing. Your calendar gets filled from 9 a.m. until sometimes 10 p.m., 11 p.m. So we actually now say that you have two bedtimes, which is one is the time where you actually go to bed, but you still continue to work because you can work from home. Many of your calls also happen in the bed while you're sleeping. And second is the time you actually sleep. So if you ask me what time do you go to bed, I may say 9 o'clock. But if you ask me what time do I sleep, probably 12 o'clock in the night. So that's what lockdown has done. But I think it's getting really monotonous. But probably that's the new way of life that we all are getting used to. We are trying to be as creative as possible, but I think there's no choice but stay inside your homes.
Well, Servify has become a global company, so I'm sure you were jet setting prior to lockdown, and the time with family now is probably a boon for you.
Yeah, it used to be. So first couple of months, my family, my wife used to say that, wow, we didn't achieve something for the last 10 years of our marriage. And she was always complaining, almost 15 days I used to travel international. And of course, even when I'm in India, I was never home, right? I mean, I used to come at late in the evenings, morning I would leave early, or I will travel. After 2 months, she's saying, when are you going back? Right? I think that's, anyway, jokes apart. But I think, yeah, it's been fantastic family time. My son really enjoys me being around. And I think it's long overdue. So in that sense, that's probably a good opportunity for me and my family in this adversity. But so we are enjoying family time. But at the same time, yes, it's almost getting to a point. It's too much family time now. I think you also want to socialize. You also want to go out. So enjoying time so far.
No, I think that's the scenario for a lot of folks, right? I think everybody is cooped up. They're seeing the same faces every day. Some people don't have the space to move around. Sree, I want to get a Servify and the amazing work that you guys are doing. But before we get there, you've had some gigs with some very, very interesting hardware component manufacturers. Nokia, Tata, LG, BPL, Samsung. You've had a lot of interesting gigs. What was your most favorite of them all, and why?
You call it interesting, but that's interesting. Believe me, everybody around me, of course, other than the folks that I used to work with, always thought my work was boring because, like I always say, it's not sexy, right? It's service, customer experience, customer service. So people really did not think my work was, sexy, exciting, interesting. But I think I always loved what I did. So I started my career with BPL, though I would have liked to be on the sexier side of all those businesses. But I think as destiny and luck would have it, I was not on the sexy side, and that's where I think the opportunity also lies today, where we are building probably a category and a business which we are very, very confident because nobody really participated in that opportunity. But coming back to when I started with BPL. Yes, they were the largest manufacturers and sellers of TVs and refrigerators and washing machines. So they were category leaders in those days. So we always used to call them the Apple of India then, right? So BPL was my first company. So if you ask me, out of all the companies, so I worked also with Samsung, Nokia, Tata's in the past. But if you ask me, one of the companies that really set the foundation for me as a person, as a corporate executive, as an entrepreneur, is certainly BPL. Because beyond just the job, I think the kind of training we used to get, the kind of learnings, and including the kind of flexibility and real customer support, not just in presentations but really in spirit, was with that company. I can tell you. So when I was just an engineer, I joined as a trainee, uh, but I could almost take a decision in the favor of a customer because I was empowered to take that decision. Just that I couldn't really execute that decision without my supervisor's approval, but I could almost commit saying, "Sir, we will do this for you." I think that's the level of flexibility that company provided in the interest of customers. So I think that's, if you ask me, really the foundation where I would really call great customer service ethos that I also probably learned from. So it was a company really, really consumer centric. And of course, a great company in terms of culture, in terms of the growth, in terms of learning. Uh, Certainly, so I would rate very high. And of course, every company that I worked with, I think I learned. I had good people to work with. Another company which I would really call out, of course, Tata is where I learned the maximum. If you ask me, thanks to uh, one of our head of businesses, Mr. Vikas, whom I always consider as again a person that taught me a lot about how to manage teams, how to run large scale operations. He was ruthless, no doubt. He was completely a maverick. If you ask me, people still say that he comes in dreams of people, right? So, but at the same time, he's the one who was absolutely clear on a very objective way of delivering performance. So he's the one who taught all of those critical aspects of how to run unemotionally when it comes to performance, but at the same time, love what you do and enjoy what you do. Think of scale, think of long term process driven approach. So, a lot of these learnings from Tata's. And last but not the least, I would say Nokia, which is a company again where I really had a lot of fun because that company was again highly valued company. I can give you one example. Nokia as a company would never agree on auditing something. So when India as a company, right? So I think somebody recommended for an audit of partners. It was completely unheard of in the headquarters of Nokia. They said, "What the hell? How can you not trust your partners and you want to conduct an audit on them?" It was almost like you're asking something that's absolutely unfair, because the company always thought that we should believe in people, we should believe in our partners, and if you have not got the right partners, it's a problem at our end, not at their end. So I think a lot of these I would say values, I keep learning from all these associations, and I continue to do that right from my entrepreneur days to my friends that I work with, or the companies that we work with. But if you have to pick these three I would call it as my great learnings in my corporate world.
That's awesome. I think they're all great brands in their own right. BPL.
Correct.
I still remember the tagline: "Believe in the best." I
Yes, believe
guess,
in the best. Yeah.
and I think a lot of people will remember some of the electronics that they probably own, and I think that's been a resurgence of the brand more recently.
Yeah.
Sree, your last gig prior to starting up was with Nokia, right?
Correct.
And was that at the time when they were going through turmoil and when they had to kind of
No,
Yeah.
No, so I left when Nokia had 70% plus market share in India, globally
Hmm.
40% plus. Probably they were at the peak of their game. I would also
Nice.
call probably the game of arrogance because they were market leaders. They didn't do anything wrong, right? So when
Hmm.
I left the month, actually I resigned. Nokia did the highest ever. I think they crossed 6 million sales that month. So Nokia used to
Wow.
do during my time 5 million units a month. So they used to sell about 5 million units. And the month I resigned, it was over 6 million units sold. So certainly when I left, of course, everybody, family to friends to including our CEO of the company said, this is the biggest blunder you're doing, because there is no better company than Nokia worldwide, right? I mean, Nokia was today's Apple or an Amazon or an equivalent of
Hmm.
that, or a Microsoft, right?
Hmm.
Because Nokia did everything right. Nokia was the largest company by market share, by revenue in India. Of course, they were again extremely large, and across the world, Nokia India used to contribute about 12% to the top line.
Hmm.
So you can imagine,
Hmm.
those days Nokia used to do over $4 billion revenue, and one of the largest companies. So everything was good, but yes,
Yeah.
you had to be an
I
entrepreneur,
think
right?
oh, of course, we'll come to that in just a moment. But I think people our age um, would have had their first phone as a Nokia phone, right? I think
Yeah,
a lot of people would have had their first Nokia phones, rather their first mobile phone would have been a Nokia feature phone at least. And then,
yeah,
obviously Nokia didn't transition very well into the smartphone segment. So I think a majority of India today wouldn't necessarily remember Nokia from those days. But I still think a lot of feature phones, even for a short period of time, was a Nokia phone. I think people enjoyed having that. Was it gut wrenching to see the hardware business go through the turmoil that it did, being
yes, of course.
Alan?
Ab- Absolutely, absolutely. I think there are few things Nokia didn't do well. I mean, you can still remember, right? Thin pin charger hai kya? So Nokia transitioned from a thick pin
Yeah.
charger, which was a feature everywhere. People would travel internationally, but wouldn't carry their chargers because they knew
Hmm.
that there will be a Nokia user somewhere where I can get a charger. So you can imagine
Right.
that's the kind of market share and reputation they had. And then they moved into thin pin from thick pin. That was the innovation then, right? So people would ask this question: "Thin pin charger hai kya?" So coming back to your question, Varun, yes, it's really really sad. I think the problem was, uh, companies need to pivot at the right time based on what the customers tell you, right? So I think
Hmm.
Nokia really didn't pivot well. I'll give you a couple of examples. So Nokia started
Yeah.
something called as Nokia Money. Okay, this was during our time in 2009, 2008. Nokia Money is nothing but your phone pay or Paytm today.
Yeah.
So Nokia pioneered wallet about 10, 15 years before anybody else could think of. So they were way ahead of in their thinking, no doubt. One, of course, the infrastructure was not so advanced, and regulations were not so supportive, but also I think they lacked the execution on the non-hardware side of business. So Nokia started
Hmm.
something called as Nokia Services, which was their non-hardware business. Screwed up completely because the
Hmm.
devices were still not capable. So if you remember, there was a model called 6600, right? 6600.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was one of the most popular Nokia devices. And in that phone, with the Symbian 60 operating
Yeah.
system, you could actually have applications loaded. So you
Yeah.
can side load a morph face application or music or all of that. So
Right.
if you ask me, today's app stores and today's
Yeah.
all those apps that you have, it was already a reality which Nokia had thought. Like again,
Yeah. This was on the
if you
Symbian
ask me,
OS. This was on the
correct.
Symbian
So
OS that they had developed.
correct.
Obviously, the utilization was a little different because they were coming out with hundreds of phones every year, and they would use OS in different ways. Obviously, it wasn't the same; it kept evolving.
Yeah, so they had multiple. So S30, S40, and S60. S60
Mm.
was the smart OS, to call it that way, and S30 and S40 were primarily feature phone, non-smart OS.
Mm.
But they
Okay.
had almost everything in place. But again, the thinking, and I think that's what an Apple did differently, right? So I can tell you when, and this is, of course, a lot of heavy heart I'm saying this, because I'm still a great Nokia fan, for the very reason I also work with them. When the iPhone 7 was launched, right? The immediate reaction from the leadership of then leadership of Nokia was, "What will a computer company do in phones? They will never be successful." I think, if you don't treat your competition well, or if you don't take your competition seriously, today's world, I think that's what Apple did, right? So they said very clearly that it is all about bringing an ecosystem together. You don't have to be a specialist in a specific area. You can always get speciality, but thinking about an ecosystem, I think, is what matters. And that's what Apple did from day one, getting the hardware and software story well. So therefore, iPhone was a revelation, right? I mean, at that time, Nokia had a comparable X25 or some model. I don't remember exactly. It was still with
Okay.
keypads,
Right.
right? So I think
I remember
certain,
also getting a Nokia. So this was in 2010, and I bought a Nokia. And I'm like, I'm not going to give into this whole hype of of the Apple, and I wanted to stick with a Nokia. I remember getting one with a pencil, and you're able to.
yeah, that's the
And
model I'm
even
referring to. Yeah,
so, even that was a little tough to actually access.
correct.
Even that, even typing on it was a little hard because I think it had two screens, and then you need to be able to touch the other screen with the first screen, right? So it
Yeah,
involved a little bit of an effort from your side for it to, actually use that phone. It was a great phone though. It still had the amazing qualities of a Nokia, which was durable. It looked great. It had all of that, but just I had to give it up about 3 months into it because I'm like, this is not really working out for me because, you know, there are so many other phones that have come out which probably give you greater value for, you know, the time you're spending on it. You spend a lot of time with your phones, right?
yeah, yeah.
Sree, so when all of this was happening, you kind of, rather, when Nokia was at its peak, you said, okay, I'm going to take a break and I'm going to go do my own thing. And the entrepreneurship bug bit you. What was that big idea that you wanted to go and pursue, and why?
Okay, so I think, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I mean, every company where I worked, I never worked really like, I should do this because this is my job. I always did it as if it were my company, right? So I think that attitude stayed all along. And of course, many a times you would also think, shit, man, it's time now to really move on and do my own because this company is not accepting my idea, right? So I think these things always happened. It probably required that nudge. And during the Nokia time, I think I had an emotional moment, which was losing my parent and not so cordial comment by my supervisor. And I said, this is it. So let's start. And always had the idea, like I said, wanted to be an entrepreneur. What else did I knew? I didn't know anything other than service, to be honest. I mean, that was my area of expertise. And of course, we always wanted to see service as a differentiator. And while everybody believed in it, but again, service always was treated as a cost center. It's a liability, but so it's more of a necessity rather than a, a clear differentiator, people thought. And that's how there was no real investment, whether in terms of people or technology or resources. So it was always left to few people to manage rather than really look at it as a strategic priority. So we said, why can't I create a network of, so if you remember at that time when I started my first company 2009, the retail was moving into a very consistent large format experience. So you would
Right.
always have these mom and pop stores, but then came the Chromas, then came the Reliance Digitals, then came the Vijay Sales of the world, where you can almost experience experience consistency in all the stores all the time. But at the same time, think of it, when I was with Nokia, we had 740 odd service centers. If you ask me, as a consumer, the consumer would have 740 experiences if he has to visit all of them,
Yeah.
because though they are all looking the same, but the experience would vary because they were run by 740 entrepreneurs, and they would all run the way they would want to run, because while they were all processes on paper, but execution was never there because there was no platform to manage, there was no consistent KPIs to draw. So we said, so my idea was, why don't you create this consistent experience and create a branded service experience too on the after sales service, like how Chroma is a brand that you can visit for retail or buying. Why can't you visit to TSS for service? And that's how we started. And the first company that actually heard our story, believed in it, was Apple. Obviously, because they were very ahead of others on customer experience, and that was the time when Apple was not too big. They were still dependent on service through carriers. So we started the first service center in Thane, and that was an Apple exclusive experience location, and that's how I started. So luckily, many other brands thereafter. We created a large network, and it was again a complete asset light model where we created franchise operations, and therefore we're able to scale significantly without much investment. So it was bootstrapped. So that's how the scale and whatever we achieved was achieved. So that was the big idea, if you ask me.
Wow. So you scaled that business, bootstrapped, and then exited that business in about 4 years, 5 years.
Yeah, about 4.5 years. Yeah.
But it was primarily the objective was to offer a consistent service delivery for these brands so that they wouldn't have to worry about that aspect. You and your
Yeah.
team would basically take care of that experience, right?
Yeah. So I will explain what used to happen. So typically, if you see, if you have to be a large format service entity, which means you're servicing, let's say, 5 different brands, what would happen is an Apple would have a certain process and therefore a certain system. A Samsung would have a different process and a different system, and a Motorola would have a different process and a different system. Reality was they were all exclusively being run by individual owners and small entrepreneurs, so they could still achieve something of that control. But when it comes to large format, and a company like a TSS then had to manage, imagine, can I actually control my operations? Getting into 5 different platforms, not possible. So what we said is, we will build an overarching platform to manage my operations and plug all different processes of different OEMs. Therefore, when I run, I consistently use one interface. My team uses one interface. But again, we adhere to the norms defined by the brands, and that's how we built. And on top of all of that, if you ask me, none of the OEMs, and that's a reality even today, which is what then led to Servify. Most of the OEMs also had platform to manage more of parts transaction, inventory, and etc. Nothing to do with the consumer, because only 5%, 4% customers would come for service. So nobody built a kind of a CRM. So that was what we built at TSS, and that really gave us a lot of advantage, because when you run 300 odd service locations, you can't really run it on an Excel or on some system that you don't have control. But we built all of that with automated processes, but also could see consistent KPIs being achieved, because we built a lot of controls that will help us, or visibility that will help us correct any situation if they were not consistent. So that was a big difference, if you ask me. So we built again a tech enabled business then, but again, all the fulfillment was being done by us ourselves.
No, that's a great story. I think there's a lot to learn for folks who are seeing behind the scenes, right? A lot of the time when you look at uh, a problem, if you start looking at the larger picture, you're probably going to see a lot more opportunities. And I think that's probably what the service solution TSS is, because you basically extrapolated to a larger industry and said, hey, if this is not working for this one brand, uh, you know, can this work for more brands, and then can this be a larger opportunity that you can go after? Can you tell our listeners what exactly is Servify today? How does it interact with the customer?
Servify, if you ask me, we are an enterprise business, right? So we are not a direct to consumer business. Therefore, if people don't have our app or don't know us, we are okay with it. We are like the Intel Inside. We are like the Qualcomm. So Servify is a platform that facilitates great customer experience when it comes to after sales, whether it is your warranty service, whether it is a damage protection, which was always thought as an insurance before. That is powered by us. Whether you want to exchange your old device and buy a new device, so that entire buyback and trade in journey is powered by us. And we said we should again do this as Apple Care, for example, for Apple, or Samsung Care, because you are buying a Samsung phone, so you will definitely like Samsung to care for you, not a Servify to care for. We may facilitate, and therefore Servify exists, but it is yet Samsung or an Apple or a Xiaomi or a Motorola or a Nokia or a OnePlus that is still delivering that experience in the minds of consumer. And that is where Servify is a brand behind this, but we are facilitating the protection business, the revenue opportunities for these OEMs after sales, and also experience elements, which is just on the trade-in buyback side. If you ask me, there was no difference to a lemon and a peach before. Whether you have a good device, old device, or a bad device, you would get the same price, because the assessment was dependent on somebody physically looking at it and saying, "Ah, dikhta hai, अच्छा है, चलो ठीक." But with technology, you don't need, and that's where a lot of fraud happens. And what used to result ultimately is a good customer also gets a bad price. We said with technology we can differentiate, and therefore we can create that differentiated model, ultimately leading to making money. So these are some foundational aspects of our business. So Servify is a platform that is probably built to unlock a multi-billion-dollar opportunity after sales until your next purchase. So if you ask me, that's my one-line pitch.
When we met for the first time, you had mentioned servicing being an unsexy business, and you also referred to that again today. Why Servify, and what appeals to you about the unsexiness of this business?
So I think, again, going back to basics, service is your right, as a consumer. Unfortunately, it was always made to believe that you need to demand to get something. I think that's almost across the globe. Service is consumers' right. So there are consumer laws to protect that. Why can't a business be built on service? I mean, think of Amazon, right? Today, there are customers and, of course, partners, but Amazon's ethos, if you see Jeff Bezos' letter today, that company does everything around consumer. I think customer obsession is a value for them. It is in their DNA, right? And that's the reason why it is where it is. Think of it, that was never the case in most companies, because the relationship with the consumer was the lifetime value was from a transaction that you do where you pay money. The moment you have an obligation to fulfill, it was always thought as a pain, a cost. But that's early days. I'm going back to Nokia days. If you ask me, service was predominantly only hardware service. And even the products wouldn't fail because the products were just hardware. It was basic product for the purpose it was built. But today the devices have evolved significantly, not just devices. If you see cars, I can tell you cars have become machines, computers, right? So there is a lot that you need to deliver to consumers, and consumers are willing to pay for it. What is Prime? Amazon Prime. I am an Amazon Prime user, and I order for my son a toy. It gets delivered in 4 hours or 6 hours. Do I really need 6 hours delivery? But I still subscribe to Amazon because I feel nice that something comes as quick as, because there is infrastructure to deliver that. There is a platform and technology to deliver that. But unfortunately, that's not the case when it came to most things after sales. And that's where we said, when nobody's looking at it, obviously because it's not sexy. Think of it. If you have to go back to your family and explain Servify versus probably your other business where you co-founded a payments business or an HR platform, don't you think the other two are simpler to explain versus what Servify does? That's real, right? But if you are able to explain that, hey, Servify actually helps you fix your phone, they understand it quickly, but then they probably feel that, oh, this is another repair company, right? It is not the experience that is a differentiator. It is the repair that is a differentiator, unfortunately. So that's the reason I say it's unsexy. And with due respect, it is not just your family, it is even my family. I can tell you, even today, my family still calls me many a times when I say family, the extended family, when they need to buy a TV or when their TV doesn't work or when their milk gets spoiled in the fridge. Hey, I have a Whirlpool fridge, it is not working. Can you get it fixed? That's when they remember me. That's how
So,
unsexy service is, right? Because they know that I have spent 20 years in service, so I can help
yeah.
them fix. Now,
Mm.
if they want to know a feature about how to use it effectively, they will never think of me because service was never sexy that way. Even if you go to the website of a company, let's say you want to make cookies on your microwave, do you think where do you get any assistance from? Google, right? Not from the company
YouTube.
that manufactured the microwave, right? Or YouTube, right? So that's how unsexy that
Mm.
industry was, which is what we believe we are trying to change one step at a time. But yeah, so that's the unsexy part. And the also the reason is, of course, that's the only space I understand probably, or have a lot of conviction on. So that's again back to why I'm in that space. But definitely, third very important aspect is when it is unsexy and when you have less people really participating in a very large opportunity, I think you are
Mm.
almost able to create a category or make a significant difference, and that's the reason. If you ask me, money is no more a driver or a motivator now. It used to be, no doubt, it is important, but like I said, it is about the difference that you're able to create rather than the money you make. So certainly there is a significant opportunity because of the very unsexy nature.
A lot of these companies like Apple, OnePlus, Xiaomi, which is now one of the largest manufacturers in India, providing mobile phones, when they have such scale, when they have large enough user base, have all the ability to manage their users themselves, why do they look towards a third party, somebody else to provide the experience? I would imagine
Sure.
there's always a cost saving. When they're able to move that outside and then basically squeeze a third party for costs and not have to think about it. uh, but also the philosophy these days has changed in terms of, I can be a top provider only if I have all of these check boxes, including great service, because you have your phone for a long period of time with you, and it has become a very important part of our lives. So I'm curious, why Servify? Why would they choose a third party?
Sure. So I think, first answer to your question is certainly over the last few years, maybe a decade or so or more, uh, the perception about Servify within the OEMs, within the brands has certainly changed. So it's no more a presentation topic. They genuinely want to deliver service. So I think that's a big help for us as a company or people like us. So I think companies really want to deliver great experience. But at the same time, they have a core business. Xiaomi or an Apple or a Samsung or any of these companies, their core business is designing great products and distributing them to the end user, right? They're not manufacturing it themselves. If you ask me, who manufactures the phone themselves? Maybe very few. They still outsource it to a very large manufacturer who is
Right.
specialized in that. So
Foxconn
a lot of
or whoever else.
yes, correct, right. And same way selling. Are you saying Apple cannot establish its own retail stores across the country with the money they have and the scale? They can. Why do they still sell it through third parties? Why do they still sell through Amazon? Why do they still sell through Chromas of the world and Apple retail partners of the world? So I think many brands, and that is applicable to almost all of these brands, their DNA is to design great products, distribute and make sure it reaches the hands of every single consumer that they target to, and keep maintaining that innovation cycle on. So they're spending a lot of time in building the next future products, which is where innovation and all of that goes in, rather than transactional aspects which are not core to them. And that's exactly where I think we come in. And when it comes to after sales, like how you have within a product, imagine if you go to a Foxconn, which is a contract manufacturer of choice, let's say manufacturing for 5 different brands or 8 different brands. If they have to source camera for a particular product, whereas camera manufacturer is the same, it may be different camera on an iPhone to a different camera on a Xiaomi phone. Don't you think they have economies of scale to go back to that manufacturer and therefore able to consolidate at a total bill of material of the product? And that's exactly what in service also we are able to do. For example, if I sign up with the FedEx for logistics, because I do logistics activity for 5 brands, my transaction volume is significantly higher, and therefore I'm able to get a better price and better attention. So if you ask me, the brand's objective, except probably few, it is not really to squeeze per se, it is to get economies of scale. So I think that's the second advantage they get. Third, since this is our core business. We will write processes that are more scalable and sustainable, and we will always be ahead of probably what's going to happen because we also want to be in the business. I think that gives them a visibility of futuristic changes that they can quickly adapt without real investment, which is again on a non-core. So I think these are some of the reasons, if you ask me. So I would put it very positively that they're not focusing on what is not core to them, though it is an important KPI to achieve, like how you want to achieve sales targets, but they don't sell themselves. Same way, services, they want to deliver great experience, and therefore they still own the process. It's just that they don't make it happen. They don't deliver it themselves. Does that answer
Yeah,
your
I
question?
think it makes a lot of sense. Basically, what you're saying is that we will take care of delivering the process that is set up. It's just that Apple can't be everywhere, and hence we take care of it for them. I think it makes a lot of sense. Servify is present in about 30 countries, right? Or is it more?
Yeah, it's more because when you say Europe alone, that gives you 26 countries. So regions is what I would probably prefer to call. So we are present in North America, that includes US and Canada.
Mhm.
We are present in Europe, all across Europe now. Our services are available for specific brands. We are present in Middle East. We are present in India. We also have subsidiaries in Australia, Singapore, and China. China we have presence, but more from a supply chain and relationship management. So we are present in multiple geographies. We are setting up in Saudi and Hong Kong and also in Israel. So we are scaling up, but yes, it's a global business now, and that's because we took a very structurally different approach, which was everything based on a platform, and I think
Okay.
that's the real advantage or real reason why we are able to scale quickly, outside of India too, because it's a platform and not really depend on people.
Actually, that was going to be my question. Is when you look at each of these countries, they have different expectations, right? From servicing itself, they're very different in terms of needs and what they're expecting from a service delivery standpoint. What were some of the things that you had to plan for in terms of enabling service? Because service is looked at a not so scalable process. It's a people driven process. And when you say platform, what were some of those aspects that drove to creating a platform? And what is part of this platform?
Okay, so I think one thing which was common across the world, and it is still the same, is service still needs to be demanded rather than delivered without asking for it, right? So I think therefore there is clear view, and secondly, we are not really changing anything from a very basic delivery model perspective, because there are still those thousands of delivery fulfillment partners. And for example, TSS, my earlier company, or B2X, it still exists, right? It's just that we are now almost building a layer that brings everybody together. And that's the reason you're able to better the process. So, one, if you ask me, did you do any innovation? Process innovation, yes. We brought a lot of efficiency because technology can bring that efficiency without having to follow up with people. It was in service business. If you ask me, what is the technology that is used the most, it is probably WhatsApp and Excel. That's the technology. And here you built a technology which is actually bringing everybody in the same, everybody in the ecosystem on a same platform, and which therefore helps you deliver consistently every time and everywhere. So let's say there are physical and digital channels, whether it is app or web or physical service center or a call center or a retail store. Unfortunately, the experience was very different in all of these channels, which is what we kind of, uh, you know, I would say made it consistent with the platform. So to that effect, if you ask me, what did we do differently? We brought the existing or many of the existing providers on the same platform, because now the platform also gives you that transparency. So it brings efficiency automatically, because you can go back to somebody who's not doing well and say that, hey, I'm taking you out of the platform, I'm throwing you out because you're not delivering, and which is not therefore dependent on them saying how well they did versus now us telling them how well or bad they did. So I think that's why we are able to scale. So again, we are not just a service play. One, that service play, again, we couldn't do it on our own unless the OEMs or the brand owners really felt the need to deliver that. So two things, if you ask me, really changed. One, the technology platform helped us bring that consistency and scale. But at the same time, it could be democratized only when the OEMs who actually have the power and muscle to make that happen. And that's the reason we are able to scale across the world.
What is the secret sauce then? What is it that they're
So,
signing up for?
one, because nobody really focused on this non-sexy business to bring, see, it is operationally intense. Imagine I have close to 90,000 retailers on my platform. I have over 17,000 service providers on my platform. Think of it, getting each of those 17,000 service providers on the platform. Do you think it would be easy getting those 90,000 retail? And I have a 5-member sales team, 9-member ops team. So just think of it. And if you have to do that, and if you need to build a platform to do that, I think we did a lot of innovation on the process side, making the whole process prepaid, making the whole process self-serving. There is amazing dashboards and visibilities. It is self-learning. A lot of these aspects which actually created that edge. But if you ask me the secret sauce, it's just getting everybody aligned with that common objective, and which is what is the toughest part, if you ask me.
Sree, you probably have incredible amount of data that's coming in with over 1 billion handsets that are probably under under the Servify umbrella. Does this lead to other interesting business models above servicing or as an ancillary to servicing that could become valuable?
So, we almost follow the Vegas principle, right? What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So, for us, data is not our business and will never be our business. It will be to improve our delivery model for our partners. So, we will never misuse the data. So, it is never going to lead to any ancillary business. Yes, you are right. We have tons of data, tons. I mean, I can tell you it's tons of data, right? But whatever happens inside the platform stays inside the platform. So we will never do any of those promotional activities, cross-selling, without that benefits our partners, which is the brands. But otherwise, data is only to better our own business model performance, but not to really piss off the customers with selling. I can't really sell I would say a washing machine to a phone customer, even if I know that he will probably buy, because that's how serious for us data is. But if you ask me, yes, we have tons of data, which also helps us. I think if you ask me one aspect, yes, how will it help? If I have to be very objective about a decision, let's say we have partnership with carriers, with the financial institutions, with the OEMs. So we have a lot of data on affordability behavior of the customer also. So tomorrow, if I want to launch an affordability based service model, certainly I will use that data. For example, today, if you want to buy a product, you have EMI option, which is provided by the banking or financial partners. But tomorrow, why not service also you can buy on a subscription model? We will probably use that data for that, but not for anything other than that. I will not help him or I will not share this data to a housing loan company because that customer has been a loyal, I know he's a good paymaster. So certainly it's not for misuse. Yeah.
I mean, it's important, to have those boundaries, right? I think the firewall is required to shield a lot of these, the trust of different carriers coming to you and the customers who are coming to you.
Correct.
Sree, you're a second-time founder, and I believe this time around you took on a little bit of external capital to basically, kind of blow this up. Take it to a large scale. You have incredible investors. You have, investors like BNext, Iron Pillar, Bloom. They probably backed you early. Were they chasing you down because you checked a lot of boxes, right? You've done this business before, like you understand servicing as an industry extremely well. You're a second-time founder, and you're going after a business that from the outside looks extremely huge, and you're probably well suited to solve it. Did you have to actually go and knock on those doors, or they were hounding you down, wanting to write checks?
No. I don't think it's a business for everybody, right? So investors also reach out to you, but I think getting seed money is always easy if you have a kind of a background. But I think as you scale, you need to really convince every moment of the day. While you may have good investors, I mean, we were lucky that Iron Pillar backed us despite the lockdown and coronavirus situation. We actually raised our Series C during this pandemic. So that's because there are good people, they believe in our business. But certainly every investor goes after good opportunities, and that's not really wrong. But at the same time, however successful you may be, you will still need to prove a business model, right? So it's therefore us always, it's mutual in that sense. But new investors, I can tell you, getting money was not easy for service related business, right? One, like I said, it's not sexy. And where do you bucket? You're saying it's a platform, but you're actually responsible for the customer experience. So it's not really a SaaS play. A lot of this, unfortunately, the first time people have to convince their own LPs and their own ICs, ICs, etc. Right? So to that extent, raising money is tough, not just for our business, but I think in general, unless you are in a very popular, most certain category. So probably Zoom would have been able to raise money like this because of the pandemic. Everybody moved to Zoom, right? So, but if you ask me, in our kind of business, however strong you may be, I'm not saying I am very strong, but as a founder, even if let's say Mr. Sachin Bansal would have started, people would have still asked him to prove the metrics. So, in my
Sure.
view, therefore, raising money is difficult, not easy. We were lucky that we got good people to back us. And as we are scaling and people are hearing good things about us, we have more and more people interested. But I can tell you,
Hmm.
these are only leads that doesn't really lead to an investment,
Sure.
really, but to a good, healthy discussion.
What changed from the last time to this time? Because last time you wanted to build a company bootstrap, or either by choice or by force. What changed this time around?
Yeah, last time, if you ask me, I didn't know anything about startup. I knew that I'm building something of my own. So it was more about passion only. Didn't have the real knowledge of the startup ecosystem, to be honest. I was not even giving interviews like this. So it was all about building, solving a problem, and you knew that you would eventually make money. So I think not mature enough, also, I would say. And taking money was always considered, because we were told when we were small that you shouldn't take money from outsiders. And when you take, then you'll lose sleep. So never took money, and we were always thinking taking money was bad. But I think as you are scaling and building a large business, I think you need capital, and there is no harm in it. It's just that if you take from bank, it was always considered okay, but not from VCs. But I think because you need to answer a lot of probably at times stupid questions also. But I think you need capital to grow your business, and that's a reality that I learned quickly after my last business. And that's the only reason why we are able to scale globally, because you need to invest to reach a certain stage. You need to keep investing, because when you are building large business, I think you need to wait and have patience to really get the cycle going, because it's a longer cycle that you're working on. So as we speak, it's been 4.5 years now, and this is now we are seeing break
Hmm.
even, and but at a scale. So I think that kind of investment was necessary to build a global business. If I had not taken money, I would have still been uh, building, but not really a large enough business that could impact everyone.
More recently, I've seen you talk a little bit more about entrepreneurship, and there's one video that I watched, which is called the 6 C's of entrepreneurship. I want to basically diverge a little bit, and I want our audience to also hear from you on some of those aspects. And before the call, you mentioned the 6 C's have become 8 C's. So what has changed between the two? And can you take us through that?
Sure, sure. So, by the way, the evolution of all these 6 E's and 2 E's, and I think just coincidental, right? So, when you're talking to few people and say that, hey, this is something we should adopt as a company. But if you ask me, the basics on 6 E's is my own experience as a founder, as an entrepreneur, right? And therefore, is very real. Uh, so, of course, the reason why 6 C's became 8 C's is also testament to the fact that you need to constantly evolve. and that's the reality of life again. And I think the additional one of the C's in these days is coronavirus. So that's why it has become 8 C's. So you need to be you need to be realistic, right?
Mm.
You need to be on your toes all the time, and also very practical and relevant. So I think that's what is 8 C's all about. So uh, the basics of 8 C's for me as an entrepreneur is, it all starts with curiosity. So if you remember as kids, and many of us, I mean, I'm always giving example of my son who comes with all those questions. Many times you may even get irritated, but he has no ego, no hesitation to ask because he wants to learn. I think that's exactly what gives him that knowledge, and he becomes a better man. And imagine, all of us tend to think that we know it all, and we don't ask the right questions, and that's where our curiosity really ends. So I mean, the lesson for me is therefore, uh, curiosity, keep it always curious, be a lifelong student, because when you're curious you get to learn. And that's certainly leading to the second C for me, which is clarity. Because when you're curious, you certainly get a lot of clarity, and that's what leads to a lot of your decision making in life, lot of your actions, because clarity of thought is something that really differentiates between very successful people and not so successful people, because you take decisions with a lot of logic behind it. Of course, in life you also take emotional decisions, but at least when you have clarity, you are almost certain of the outcome. So I think that's my second C. And this is again very relevant to you being an entrepreneur also, right? Because you need to know what exactly you are driving after. Is it fame? Is it real business value? Is it value to your shareholders and stakeholders? Stakeholders, when I say, it includes the consumers. So you need to be absolutely clear what are you doing, because many a times we've seen, and I think statistically also it says over 90% of the startups fail because they're very thought of being an entrepreneur in many cases also to get popularity, right? And you can then of course write multiple articles why you failed, or uh, but passion versus real reason to be an entrepreneur. Yes, you may always fail. That is of course applicable to big companies and everybody. But if your objective is just to get passion, just to get famous, I think then it's a wrong clarity on which you base the foundation of your company. So I think clarity therefore is extremely crucial for me. uh, Third certainly is commitment. That's the next C, because if you don't have the commitment, you need to uh, really probably be ready to lose a lot of things to achieve something. That includes starting with family, right? I mean, you asked me a question: how does my family react now? I can tell you for almost 10 years, right from the time I got married, and that was the very next year I started my first venture. I've been away from my family, really, if you ask me, on many important occasions because I was running after a bigger objective. Of course, not that I will get that again, but I think the objective is large enough. And I can give you a simple example. When I used to earn good salary, I used to be in a good position. I could buy a house every bank would give me loan. I could buy a house, and frankly, my family and my wife used to always say that, why do you live in a rented house? Why can't you buy, even if it is a small one bedroom? Because in Bombay, having a one bedroom house is also not so easy, right? It's expensive. It's close to about $200,000. So I used to always say that I will not buy on an EMI, because if I earn, let's say, 100 rupees, I don't want to end up paying 80 rupees as my EMI and always live on
Yeah.
hand to mouth. Instead, I'm living in a good house. The day I have enough money, I will buy a house of my choice. Why should I compromise? And 10
Yep.
years of hard effort, or 3 4 years of hard efforts, and when you had a good outcome of sale of the first venture, the first thing I did was bought a house. And today I don't have an EMI to go after, but
AMI.
I have a
Yeah.
nice house of my own. So I think that's the commitment I had for myself to really make it successful, to make it successful
Mm.
for the people that work with me. So that's the third C. Fourth is certainly conviction, and I think that comes with again a lot of belief in what you do. And if you ask me, and this is what I say, even in our office, you'll see this as posters. Conviction is my biggest funding ground, because that's the one that makes me believe in whatever we do. Because just to give a couple of examples, if I have to do a demo in front of a very important customer, I know it will not. Probably sometimes it will not work because it's a test environment. But I can still give some answers, probably not even making him realize that the demo didn't work, right? And that's a conviction because you almost are certain of even potential uncertainties. So I think that's certainly very important to be an entrepreneur. So that's, I think, again, the fourth C for me. So conviction. When you have all of this, I think you also need to be courageous. And I think that's exactly, again, going back to very recent episode, if you ask me, of Mukesh Ambani, right? When he started Geo, the first thing that he said is data network doesn't exist in our country. Can I democratize data? And I think he really did that in whatever means and ways. Some people have plus and minus views about it, or positive or negative views. But I think that's courageous, right? You need to really be courageous, and that's what most successful entrepreneurs, whether it is Jeff Bezos, whether it is Steve Jobs, they were not the most popular from if you ask me, for the decisions they would have taken inside their companies. And there are even stories when Steve Jobs used to take the lift, people would avoid those journey with him, right? Because he would ask questions, and if you're not really answering it right, it might be a last day.
You get fired, yeah.
But they were incredible. Yeah, but they were incredibly courageous, right? They took decisions where they challenged the status quo. So I think you need to be courageous, and that used to be my 5 C's, which used to lead to the sixth C, which in the earlier parlance 6 C's was conquer. So we said if you have these 5 C's as your DNA, you can always conquer the world, which is the sixth C. But I think over a period of time, especially in the current context, we said that's not enough. You need to also start caring for people, because the market is so difficult. Yes, as organization, as economy, we are not really going well. But as leaders, it's our responsibility to take care of our people. That's what parents do, right? So we said you need to care for your people, because it's not a short-term partnership you have with your people or with your company. It's a long-term ambition that you're building, and therefore, if you also let go of them at this difficult time, then you're not really setting the right example. So we said we have to introduce the 6 C's. The 7th C into the 6 C's, and that's what care is all about. So you need to care for people around you, care for the business you are in, care for stakeholders, and that's a 7th C, if you ask me. And reality is there is also the coronavirus, so that's the 8th C. So we said situations will be as good as coronavirus in the future. So build everything sustainable in a manner that you may have such eventualities which are completely out of your control. And that's a reality of the 8 C's today. So that's foundation, for me, the 8 C's from 6 C's today. Yeah.
Hopefully, the 8th C is going to be temporary and leave the world hopefully somewhat better.
Yes. Again, it's only more about symbolism, right? So coronavirus is just a symbol, but we are saying that there will be a lot of coronaviruses in our future, in our lives. And that's exactly what you need to be prepared for, because you can't always predict everything in life, and you need to be ready to manage such uncertainties. And that's exactly what coronavirus has taught us. I mean, think of behavior change, right? Work from home. So all of us are today so productive, rather more productive. And especially in Asian markets, people always thought, and I can say even I felt probably sometimes, that many people need bosses sitting above their heads to work or deliver results, right? And that's the reason work from home as a culture was never appreciated in our country or in many Asian countries. But today, I can tell you, people are more productive sitting at home. Look at the channel behavior. I mean, many big companies had just a very static website. Today, they are expecting them to be an Amazon, right? I mean, I will not name them, but think of it. Many big companies had just a website, or not even have a good website that was up to date. So I think there is significant behavioral change, which is what the coronavirus has taught us.
There's definitely a lot of rewiring, and those who thought good websites and good processes were left to only new age businesses and not for them are now seeing reality very differently. Hopefully, it is, like I said, it's just going to leave the world in a better way with regards to a lot of processes. I think work from home is a very good example, right? I think I covered this in a couple of episodes prior, but we've moved from not embracing work from home before, because you always thought people wanted to do other things and not actually work, to now saying, you know what, we have actually figured out a way to work from home, and hence people will be more appreciative of the fact that people are taking a work from home, and probably they can expect a delivery at the end of the day, for example, right?
Yeah.
What's the COVID outlook now? What's next for Servify?
Yeah. So, with due respect, this was the time which actually helped us scale our business significantly. In fact, June was our best month ever in the history of Servify. July will surpass June numbers also as the best month ever. So we did over 200% of our target, largely because, while on the one side the shops are closed, there is lockdown everywhere, but I think the channel behavior shifted quicker than that we thought. And again, in our business, no, you sign a contract on month one, but you actually start execution on month 10, month 12, because integrations, getting everybody in the ecosystems, right from contracting to actual execution takes 8, 9, 10 months. But all the past years hard efforts are starting to see results now. And I think because your objective is a win-win, you want even the partners that you work with, whether it is Apple, Samsung, Xiaomi, anyone, they also don't want to lose any opportunity and make every opportunity to make money, right? So I think that's helped us. So COVID, post-COVID recovery has been fantastic for us as a company. Hope we'll continue to scale from there. But unfortunately, yes, COVID has impacted everybody, including our partners and us as a company when it came to first couple of months. But we took those hard choices that we will not sack anyone, we will not reduce salary for anyone. We will get back to normalcy as soon as possible. And from June onwards, we are back in normalcy, I would say.
That's phenomenal. I think one of those fortunate businesses to get the bump, the COVID bump, and hopefully it continues. Awesome. Sree, this has been amazing. Thanks for sharing, from your experience and what you've been up to. Thanks a lot. This has been awesome.